India's big power projection. World watches India's sea control. Joint exercise by two aircraft carrier battle groups. Power projection by Sukhoi and Rafale fighter jets. After Philippines, Vietnam and Indonesia eye India's BrahMos, India checkmates China in the Indo-Pacific. That's our top focus on India First.
Both Vietnam and Indonesia have shown interest in buying the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile. Now, this would be a major shot in the arm after Philippines bought the BrahMos anti-ship missile for close to $375 million earlier this year. Now join the dots. Two aircraft carrier battle groups exercising together. The Rafales and the Sukhoi 30 MKIs carrying out long endurance flights, and the BrahMos missiles being sold to friendly countries facing an expansionist China, quite like India. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We get to the ramifications and the signaling here, but first, as always, the headlines on India First. Congress goes back to soft Hindutva. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra launches the Congress Party campaign in poll-bound Madhya Pradesh, performs the Narmada Puja. BJP brands the Congress General Secretary a Chunavi Hindu. Vaccination data of hundreds of Indians leaked. Government says there is no COVID data breach. The platform is safe. India Today tracks down the Telegram hacker. He says he sourced the data from associated platforms. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviews progress of cyclone Biparjoy, meets department. The Met Department also issues an orange alert as the storm intensifies. The main accused in the Uttar Pradesh online gaming conversion case nabbed from Maharashtra. The accused is accused of brainwashing minors and asking them to offer namaz to win online games. Dutch vlogger assaulted in Bengaluru. Trader seen pushing the YouTuber for shooting in a marketplace. Police take suo motu cognizance, arrest the accused.
Sir, Jesus.
Aircraft carriers are all about total sea control. Aircraft carrier battle groups with their destroyers, with their frigates and submarines, along with the fleet air arm, are all about national power projection. The Indian Navy has carried out an exercise with the indigenous INS Vikrant carrier battle group and the INS Vikramaditya carrier battle group, both operating in tandem, both operating together. The Indian Air Force also carried out an exercise with the Rafales and the Su-30 MKIs, carrying out long endurance flights, of course with mid-air refueling, dominating the air, dominating the sea, and subsurface warfare is India's big message.
Two Indian Navy aircraft carrier battle groups operating in tandem. India's massive sea control power projection in the Indian Ocean region. INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya carrier battle groups with their fleet air arm, warships and submarines carry out a major joint exercise. More than 30 fighter jets and helicopters carry out sea and air domination and anti-submarine warfare exercises together.
So this exercising on the
Western seaboard, integration of the air arm, and making the second aircraft carrier is certainly going to send a message across to all our adversaries that Indian Ocean region is now going to be, populated with two CBGs, which will be taking care of our area of interest primarily, which is the Indian Ocean region.
The exercise was part of Indian Navy's sea control mission. The Indian Navy's area of operations and responsibilities extend from the North Arabian Sea to the South China Sea. With the fighter jets and submarines as part of the carrier battle group, Indian Navy is capable of securing the seas and the skies in the waters where the carrier battle group operates. INS Vikrant is expected to be fully combat ready by 2024, with the MiG-29K fighter jets currently undergoing flight trials. The Indian Air Force also carried out a major exercise with the Rafale and the Su-30 MKIs undertaking long endurance operations both in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal with mid-air refueling.
In the recent past, you must have seen the Rafales taking off from Hashimara, coming all the way down deep into the Bay of Bengal, and then coming up to Andamans, North Andamans, and then going back. And also, you saw last week, there was a wolf pack of Sukhois, which had gone all the way across the Arabian Sea and carried out a mission, which means that the Indian Air Force, the Indian Navy are moving in tandem.
The exercises are being seen as part of a major signal to India's adversaries, both along the line of control and the line of actual control. India's dominance in the Indian Ocean region may well be China's Achilles heel. Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's try and make sense of India's strategic messaging here. Joining me on this India First special, Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, former Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Western Naval Command. Also with me is my colleague Shiv Arur, one of India's finest voices on matters military. And Shiv, I want to begin by asking you, first such exercise by INS Vikrant and Vikramaditya operating together. What concepts are being validated? Explain India's power projection here.
Well, Gaurav, operating both the aircraft carriers at the same time, as part of multi-carrier operations, sends out a very, very significant message. The Indian Navy is the preeminent force in the Indian Ocean region. This is the Indian Navy's area of responsibility. But there can be no mistaking the fact that such power projection and muscle flexing, one of the intended recipients is, of course, China. Apart from the fact that China has been trying to assert itself in the Indian Ocean, the fact that India has two very, very high quality aircraft carriers operational at the same time, operating together, is also a bit of a, cocking a snook at China, if one can look at it that way. Remember, China has two operational aircraft carriers as well, but they are nowhere near the same kind of quality. And this isn't just something that the Indian Navy or India thinks. This is a global reputation that China has, that it's going to take them a decade or more to, master the capability of operating an aircraft carrier far from shore. They've got two operational, they've got a couple more being built, but they still don't have that the kind of experience and the kind of capability that the Indian Navy has built up over many, many years. So in one sense, when it comes to flexing, power projection, messaging, I think the exercise at sea is something that has irked China a great deal. It's one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of propaganda in the other spheres, including Galwan, etc. But this particular operation is one to be very proud of. Remember that the INS Vikrant is an indigenous aircraft carrier. It was delivered to the Indian Navy just under a year ago. It's going to turn 1 in September, and for that ship to be almost fully operationally ready, and for the Indian Navy to have the confidence to deploy it in a complex exercise with large carrier battle groups in the Arabian Sea is a great testament to the Indian Navy's capability and indigenous shipbuilding.
Oh, absolutely. Stay with me, Shiv. Admiral Sinha, China has two aircraft carriers, Lining and Shandong, and is building a third, Fujian, close to, I think, 80,000 tons displacement. How would China be looking at two carrier battle groups exercising together? How would China be looking at this Indian Navy exercise?
Gaurav, thank you for getting me on your program. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
You know what we have to understand that India has been operating aircraft carriers since 1960.
Yes.
And operating aircraft carrier is not only the flying part and its operational sort of usage of the aircraft and helicopters, but it is also the concept of operation which is important. Where do you deploy the aircraft carrier? And now that we have two carrier groups, battle groups, as Shiv mentioned, uh, we have always said right from 60s, if you pick up the Indian Navy's maritime strategy book, not often supported by the government, but Navy always had this that we need two operational aircraft carriers, one for the eastern seaboard and one for the western seaboard. Today we have realized that we have two aircraft carrier. We did operate two aircraft carrier for a little while in
Yes.
1989 when Vikrant and Virat both were operational. And here we have many more ships. So carrier battle group is given a task. It is not only flying task. It is given a task to go destroy so and so area, sanitize so and so area, make sure that nobody comes in either from there or on the surface or underwater. So this is testing of that capability of handling a complex exercise by the commanders who are at sea, the fleet commander, the Western Naval Command commander in chief, as to do they have the ability to plan such a massive exercise and do they have the ability to execute it. So that must be understood as to what is the nuance. And I would think that our adversary is a long way off from this because they still haven't got their hand onto the night flying part of it from the deck. Some of them have done it, but not enough pilots. Whereas our every pilot on MiG-29K on both carriers, they are both day and night fully operational people.
Okay.
So that is one. Second aspect is this is the first time that we got the MH-90 Romeo,
Yes.
the ASW helicopters which we have bought from US, and they are the state-of-the-art niche technology, top-of-the-line ASW helicopter, which we needed very badly. So now, when you say that you got two CBG, what does it mean? That I can effectively have sea control and sea denial at the choke points on both ends of the globe.
Very interesting. You mentioned the choke points at both ends of the globe, and I'll come to that in just a moment. So you are saying we control the sea, we control the skies, and with anti-submarine warfare helicopters, we deny sea to the adversary.
Absolutely.
Admiral, you're a naval aviator. Join these dots along with Indian Air Force exercises of Rafales and Su-30 MKIs carrying out long endurance exercises, 8 hours, 9 hours of non-stop flying with mid-air refueling. Is this again sending out a message to China?
Well, very much, Gaurav, it is quite possible that there are some targets which are in an area which is beyond the radius of action of the carrier-borne fighter aircraft or the BrahMos missile, which can be fired from all our ships.
Yes.
And if the target is away, then the fastest way to do it is to send the Air Force aircraft loaded with type of weapon that the commander wants and have a refueler, like you just saw the photograph which you're flashing on the screen.
Yes.
So I think it's a very, very strong message that it is not only the naval fleet presence, we also have the Air Force capable of reaching far and delivering the weapon and come back. So this is a very big, and you can't shoot down those fighters because they are all going with an air defense escort. If the Su-30 is going for an attack at that distance, he also has gotten what is called the AD escort going along with it, so that if there is somebody who's wanting to destroy or target the Su-30, these two Rafales can take on them.
Okay.
So it is not easy to destroy them.
Okay, would this, before I bring in Shiv again and before I go to the other big story and that other big strategic signaling from India, I want to ask you one more question. Would this deter China from carrying out any misadventure in the Himalayas like it did during Galwan or post Galwan?
That's a great question, Gaurav, and one would have expected anchor like you to ask this question. This is, I would say, a trump card with India, that you mess around too much, and if we feel that our territorial integrity is being breached beyond what we expected it, this is one way to restrict the movement of their ships and tankers. 80% of their oil, Gaurav, is traversing on the Indian Ocean. Even if you harass or even if you delay them by one day, the tanker chain, do you know the fighting ability of that country is to go down by many days because it doesn't have its own oil, very little. So this 80% of oil coming over Indian Ocean, either from the Gulf or from African coast or from even the South America, they all have to traverse through this way. And if I have one carrier battle group on both sides, oh, God forbid, I really don't know what will happen to them.
And both the choke points that you were mentioning, India will dominate both the choke points.
Absolutely. The Straits of Malacca and the Gulf of your Straits of Malacca and your Gulf of Hormuz.
Absolutely. I now want to shift focus to the other big story and bring in Shivarur once again. After Philippines bought the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile for close to $375 million earlier this year, January 2023, both Vietnam and Indonesia have shown interest in this extremely versatile supersonic cruise missile. Philippines had bought the shore-based version of the anti-ship missile. India has ship-launched, air-launched and mobile launcher version of this precision strike supersonic cruise missile. But this is not just about India's arms sales. Those countries that are showing interest in these missiles are also facing an increasingly expansionist China.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
It's one of the world's most formidable anti-ship weapons, the supersonic BrahMos cruise missile, and it's made exclusively in India. And now, over a year after India opened its export book with a supply deal to the Philippines, more Southeast Asian countries threatened by Chinese aggression are lining up for the BrahMos missile system. India today has learnt that two more major nations, Vietnam and Indonesia, are very close to finalizing orders for this weapon. Both Indonesia and Vietnam have extensive coastlines and face security challenges in the Indian Ocean and South China Sea, where there are territorial disputes with China. The BrahMos missile's long-range and anti-ship capabilities can bolster maritime defenses of Vietnam and Indonesia and deter any aggressive actions in their territorial waters. Vietnam, as a neighboring country, is wary of China's expanding influence and power projection activities in the region. The BrahMos missile, with its ability to strike targets from long ranges, can act as a deterrent against any potential aggression or encroachment by China in the South China Sea. The BrahMos is in service with all three Indian armed forces as of now, with the Indian Army in the land-launched configuration, with the Air Force in the air-launched configuration from Su-30 fighters, and with the Indian Navy in a ship-launched version, as well as shore-based coastal defense variants that target ships at sea. This last version is the one that both Indonesia and Vietnam are now interested in acquiring. Vietnam's defense minister will be visiting India later this month and is likely to discuss and firm up the deal with his Indian counterpart, though an actual announcement may only come later. For Indian defense industry and the export push, two more nations acquiring the BrahMos will be a major boost, not just financially, but in terms of India's strategic partnerships in the Asia-Pacific in the shadow of an aggressive China. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let me once again bring into this conversation my colleague Shivarur and Admiral Sinha. Admiral Sinha, the BrahMos supersonic cruise missiles are part of India's missile success stories. But the fact that despite China frowning, Philippines has already bought it, Vietnam and Indonesia are showing interest in it. What do you make of this? Are democracies along the region coming together to checkmate China?
I think there are two very clear messages, Gaurav. One is the confidence in this weapon by virtually all countries. And second is that the cost of missile, it suits the pocket of even the smaller countries. Now, if you look at both Vietnam and Philippines and Indonesia and sort of Vietnam, they all have territorial disputes in the South China Sea, and they are almost at the distances that the BrahMos missile can go and hit. And therefore, I would think that even without having to take this missile to sea, they should be able to prevent any occupation by their adversaries in the South China Sea on those Paracel Islands or the other islands which are under dispute. So I think there are two things very clear, that India's ability to make these missiles in the cost which is affordable by these countries,
Yes.
number one. And secondly, the confidence that it has generated that, we don't have to go to sea, we can actually fire from shore
Yes.
and still protect our islands. So I think this is extremely important. And you mentioned that democracies, yes, but Vietnam, as you know, that is a single party rule, is really hardly a democracy. But Philippines, yes, Indonesia is. So whereas Indonesia has got very good equation with China, but their own defense, they will not compromise. That is for sure.
Absolutely. And Shiv, let's also talk about Chinese weapons and systems here. The Chinese weapons are drawing a lot of criticism, not just from China's client state, Pakistan. They're drawing criticism from several other countries where they've been sold. BrahMos, on the other hand, is India's success story. The price, as Admiral Shekhar Sinha mentioned, it's affordable, $375 million for 3 or 4 units that was bought by Philippines. And the fact that between $375 to $675 million is what Indonesia and Vietnam want to spend. Shiv, tell us more.
Vietnam and Indonesia are, we are told, very, very close to concluding, a deal with India to procure the BrahMos coastal defense anti-ship system. Now, Gaurav, you do know that the Philippines has already ordered the missile system. Deliveries are underway, making them India's first export customer of this weapon. But Vietnam and Indonesia, Vietnam particularly, which has territorial maritime disputes with China, the Chinese aggressions in the South China Sea, Asia Pacific region have affected all of the countries there, particularly Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia. All of them want, some kind of a credible deterrent, a conventional deterrent capability, against Chinese vessels that have been, encroaching en masse in these territorial areas, in the territorial waters of Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. So for them to choose an Indian-built weapon system, the Indo-Russian BrahMos, which is a very, very, formidable weapon system, nothing like it in the world at this point of time, is not just excellent for Indian defense industry, because this missile is built nowhere else, but it also solidifies and the strategic partnerships that India has in this region, the ASEAN region, the Look East policy, very much a manifestation of that. But it also is a massive message for China. China, remember, is a country with significantly lower quality weapons that it has supplied to countries in Africa, Pakistan, etc. It's tried to push them to Myanmar as well. But there is an increasing perception that India-built weapons are not only more available and will be available during conflict, but are of a significantly higher quality. So at all of these levels, it's a huge, huge thing when Vietnam and Indonesia both decide to sign up.
Oh, absolutely. And the budget, they're affordable. Admiral Sinha, India has a $5 billion, 35,000 crore rupee defense export target in the next 3 years from now, but 2025, 2.5 years. The real military strength of a country is actually indicated by the quality of its weapons and the market. This too, perhaps, would be a deterrent for any adversary from undertaking any misadventure.
You're absolutely right, Gaurav. And we will positively meet this target as far as I can see. This is not the only system, but the Akash surface-to-air missile system has proven its worth. The good thing is that India says that we have got these deployed on all our platforms.
Yes.
These are already operational. Every practice firing, it has shot down its target. BrahMos, it is a supersonic on the terminal phase. I got the first firing done of the Indian ship when I was fleet operation officer.
Yes.
And I'm telling you that it just goes through you can't even take a photograph, even if you have a high-speed camera next to the target. It goes at that speed and it just sort of goes through, slices it and breaks it into two. Similarly, the SAM system also, there is a lot of scope for its export. And I am told that a lot of countries are interested in buying. By and large, same countries who have bought BrahMos, because they say if India can use this operationally with so much of threat on them, I think then we are quite safe to use it. So this is the theme, that India first uses it itself, shows its capability, and only then offers it to its own friends. So I think that is a big message, that you are exporting quality weapon systems. The one which you are using, it's not that I am using something else and you are giving your duff machine. No, it is not so.
Absolutely. I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Admiral Sinha and Shiv, as always, many thanks for joining me. I now want to shift focus to a disturbing story that's come forward. Shahnawaz Khan, alias Baddu. He is the key accused in Ghaziabad's gaming app conversion racket. Now, Baddu was arrested in Maharashtra, in the Raigad district, on Sunday. We now get you a detailed report of how he lured minors and tried to force them to convert to Islam.
Breakthrough in the UP police crackdown on the alleged gaming jihad. The key accused behind the racket that alleged used the gaming portal for conversions to Islam is arrested from a lodge in Alibag in Maharashtra. The police received information about the suspect Shahnawaz, who recently purchased a new SIM card. Shahnawaz's location was tracked to Alibag, where he was hiding with his brother. Shahnawaz and a cleric were booked under the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Act based on a complaint that alleged a boy was converted to Islam by the suspect. Shahnawaz, who went absconding on May 31st, allegedly kept changing his location and assumed new names. The police investigation had uncovered how the conversion racket worked. Shahnawaz allegedly targeted kids via an online game called Fortnite. The kids were asked to recite Quran if they lost the game. When the kids won, the suspects allegedly impressed upon the players that they won because they recited Quran. Shahnawaz remained in touch with the minors through a communication tool called Discord. To brainwash kids, the suspects allegedly circulated videos of Islamic hardliners like Tariq Jamil and Zakir Naik. Kids from different parts of Europe were also targeted. Many Christian kids abroad allegedly were converted to Islam. Shahnawaz allegedly motivated minors to go to mosque and convert. He allegedly sent mosque locations to the victims. 2 people from Ghaziabad and 1 each from Faridabad and Chandigarh allegedly fall prey to the gaming jihad racket.
चैट में जब हम लोगों ने डिटेल स्टडी करी तो उसमें बहुत सारे जाकिर नायक जिन पे प्रतिबंध लगा दिया गया था भारत में, उनके वीडियो शेयर करे गए थे. नमाज अदा करने के तरीके, इस्लाम के फ़ायदे, सरकमसिजन कराने की टेक्निक, तो उस शर्त के वीडियो शेयर करे गए थे और इनको लालच दिया जाता था कि ये इस्लाम में कन्वर्ट हो जाए.
The alleged gaming jihad started during lockdown when schools were shut. The National Commission for Protection of Child Rights has asked the central government to probe the gaming portal Fortnite and the messaging app Discord. Bureau Report, India Today.
जब इन्हें हमें ज़रूरत पड़ती है ये हमारे दरवाजे ज़रूर खटखटाते हैं. अब अरविंद केजरीवाल मुसीबत में है तो आज उनको हमारी सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत है. लेकिन ये लोग कहाँ थे जब 2019 में हमारे साथ इतना बड़ा धोखा हुआ? कौन था जो हमारे साथ खड़ा हुआ? ये आज जो शोर कर रहे हैं, जो कहते हैं कि आइन को बचाओ, जमहूरी